Thank you so much, Connie, and thanks for reminding the hashtag. I will say it again, repeat it, hashtag Webit, join the discussion, but above all, use the TVS events platform, which is powering Webit Global Impact Week, along with most of the major UN events and many government events around the world. One of the best platforms for virtual events, and definitely the leader when it comes to NGO, large events, and government such. Now, moving up next to another challenging discussion on blockchain driving digital revolution and regional equality. We started today with someone who kind of branded the whole discussion many years ago, writing the book Blockchain, Don Tapscott, and now being executive chairman of the Blockchain Research Institute and best-selling author. Now we have Max Yakubowski from Cointelegraph in a great discussion with a number of leaders in the area. Hey, how are you, Max?
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Global Impact Week, and we're here at the panel discussion about blockchain driving digital revolution and regional equality. I'm Max Yakubowski. I lead the op-ed section at Cointelegraph, the leading crypto media outlet. And I have two wonderful guests here today. I let them introduce themselves. Bowie, let's start from you. Could you please tell us a bit about your background?
Sure, thanks, Max. Glad to be here. I'm Bowie Lau, based out of Hong Kong. I wear a few hats. One of them is run MaGEHold, which is an angel investment firm based out of Hong Kong and Singapore. Between me and my husband, we use our own fund and do direct investment to fund startups. I'm also a partner of a VC fund called True Global Ventures. TGV is more a blockchain-focused fund. We just closed our fund over 100 million. And we'll specifically focus on 4 specific verticals, including financial services, infrastructure, gaming/entertainment, and also AI/data analytics. I'm also an LP of a crypto fund to get indirect exposure of cryptocurrency. So that's the investment side. On the other hand, I also run MaGEHspire, which is a tech venture development and education group. I help a lot of startups in terms of business development and market access. On the other hand, I focus on education because I truly believe pay forward and knowledge is free. And I like to organize a lot of educational events and summit and conferences focusing on emerging technology, including blockchain, NFT, property technology, and investment related topics. So glad to be here today.
Thank you, Bowie. Could you please tell us a little bit more about how did you actually get into the blockchain space? Since it's a relatively new industry, it would be like, do you remember when was the first time you heard about blockchain, like the word blockchain?
First time I heard about blockchain was back in 2017. It was introduced by my husband. So when he, I think, first mentioned beside Bitcoin, and he talked about Ethereum. And I was like, what the hell is that? So then he started to tell me a little bit more. Then subsequently, I actually went and took a blockchain strategy course to get, I guess, a little bit more deep dive to understand what is blockchain. So yeah, that's how I got in. And I think when I first start tracking the Bitcoin and the Ether price, I think Bitcoin was only 1,200. And people ask, did I buy? No, I didn't. I think there are a lot of people having the same story. Did they buy when it was really low? I think everybody has this similar story of Bitcoin or Ether.
Yeah. Thank you. Tom, let's move to you. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Tom Trowbridge. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. Couple different, sort of like Bowie, I've got a couple different things going on in the space. I think a lot of people here do because it's full of entrepreneurs. My main day-to-day is being co-founder of a company called Fluence Labs, which I can talk about later, but we're building and have built actually a peer-to-peer compute layer, which is a complement to the peer-to-peer payments of the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and peer-to-peer storage like Arweave and Filecoin, IPFS, etc. And so we're the compute layer that dovetails with that really allows a decentralized cloud. it's a very kind of big concept. But the and I also am on the board of a public company in the US that's on the NASDAQ called MaGEHold Digital Mining, which is a environmentally beneficial Bitcoin miner. Not something that's probably covered too much in the press these days yet, but I think I'm happy to talk about it further. And I'm an advisor to a company building the open metaverse called Crucible. But those, and I got into the space, basically by helping found and build a company called Hedera Hashgraph, which is the cryptocurrency is HBAR, HBAR. And I joined Manson Lehman, the other two founders, in 2000, and I think it was 17 or 16, and when it was just a white paper and an idea, and built the team, raised the money, got kind of the global Fortune kind of 100 companies like Google, LG, IBM, Nomura to join the governing council and effectively own and run that blockchain, which is the only one, I think, which is governed by enterprises and designed for enterprise use while being a public blockchain. So it's technically not a blockchain, but we can get into that later. And so that was kind of my kind of real baptism by fire and entry into the space, was basically building that. And I found that by way of investment. And I've been doing investments for a long time. And a friend of mine introduced me to Manson Lehman as I was kind of investigating the space. And I invested with them, thought what they're doing was really different and interesting. And then they asked me to come on board and basically complement their academic and kind of military backgrounds. And so bring some more kind of enterprise relationships to help build out this council. So that's a little bit of my background and what I'm doing.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you, Tom. Speaking about P2P payments, do you think that might actually help to like this industry exactly might and this like era and within the blockchain space, which is enormously huge? Would it help to improve the mass adoption of this technology on a massive scale, in your opinion?
Undoubtedly, yes. And it's actually interesting you mentioned that because, whether peer-to-peer payments certainly can be a faster, cheaper, uncensorable or less censorable way for people to transmit money that is far cheaper than the current payment, kind of centralized payment rails we have now. And so that certainly is something that's happening, and I'm very excited about it. And that's exactly what cryptocurrencies do. But the other element of it, which is is a complement, but it's not exactly peer-to-peer, are payment systems using stable coins built on blockchains, but that still can be used by existing infrastructure where it's very fast and very cheap, but it's not exactly peer-to-peer. And it's funny you mention that because literally just today, Shinyan Bank, one of, if not the largest bank in Korea, announced a proof of concept completion with Hedera, where they were doing a won-based stablecoin to facilitate very cheap, very fast remittances. And to give you a sense, and very cheap, and what that means is numbers, 3 to 5 seconds and about 1/100th of a penny per transaction. Right. So now that is not technically, at least I didn't read it. It didn't look like it was technically peer-to-peer. But when when a bank offers that type of service, it leads to the adoption of blockchain globally, no doubt. Although I'd argue in the true Web3 community would say that's not peer-to-peer. So they would not find that to be a sufficiently decentralized and trustless and let's say safe alternative to the existing rails. But systems like that will still get built, and when they're built on fast protocols like Hedera, that will lead to much greater adoption of this infrastructure overall than we currently see.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Well, let me jump back to what you said. I guess all of us would agree that education is still the key to the mass adoption, right? So since you mentioned the education is part of your interest, let me ask you this question. How do you see like this education would actually unlock those potential, like on a massive scale? Like where should we start with? Like high school, universities? Like what should we educate about those people, Bowie, in your opinion?
For children, I think they need to start as early as possible, because what happened is, let's talk about gaming, right? I think we all play games since we were kids, and gamers in general are very used to digital assets. I think based on whatever level that we get into a game, and we certain weapons and gift that we own it digitally. So I think when we were young, we already got used to this type of mechanism. And now from the gaming world, I think it would be a great way to educate children when they're young. I mean, not obviously not super young, but then I think because this is the future, this is the direction. I think children need to start as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you. We actually linguists, they have a special term for those generations. They call them iPad native speakers. So it's exactly the generation we're talking about. They first start to learn how to speak with their iPads and then how to speak their languages, which is really interesting in terms of where it leads us. But definitely, I guess we can start while they're as young as possible, and it definitely would help them. Yes, thank you. Also, let's go straight to the point of this panel, right, about social transformation and regional equity. Tom, in your area, what are the real implications of this technology that might lead to those needed transformations? And what are the real implications that would help to achieve the regional equality, in your opinion?
I mean, how much time do we have? I guess I'll take it on two tracks. There's, I think, the Bitcoin track for regional equity, and then there is the kind of Web3 track. And so first, I'll talk about the Web3 and then the Bitcoin. But on the Web3, one thing that I think we all recognize is that developers are in high demand, and they're in very high demand, particularly in geographies like Silicon Valley or San Francisco and Berlin and real population hubs. What Fluence is doing is building a way for developers to upload code. And when that code is used, these developers share in the hosting revenue. It's as if AWS shared some of their revenue with the open source projects that they actually use. And of course, AWS doesn't do that. And so our view is that this will effectively code on Fluence will cost about the same, if not less, than it does on the traditional hosting platforms, but completely transparently will, via smart contract, share some of that revenue with the actual authors. And what that means is that authors anywhere in the world, if their code is used, can share in hosting revenue. We don't think this will people be buying boats and airplanes with this money, because it'll be very small, small parts of small components of the actual cost, because if it isn't, people will fork it and copy it. But it gives the opportunity for good developers with good ideas who write code that's used to participate in this economy from anywhere in the world. And I think that is incredibly powerful. And actually, if you think about it, probably benefits most people that are outside of the current innovation kind of hubs in the developed world. And so that, to me, is an enormous potential benefit for regional equity in giving, leveling the playing field, because every piece of code written, no matter where it's written, is still available online, and anyone can share in that revenue. And that, to me, is without having to build a whole sales organization, having to build a hosting company, right? So it lowers the barrier for people to actually participate in the space. So I'm really excited about that. And then the other part of this is Bitcoin. And, there's a lot of discussion on Bitcoin. Anyone can buy a Bitcoin, anyone can do whatever. And that's true. I look at a bit bigger, which is look at El Salvador. And what they're doing, they're effectively legalized Bitcoin as tender. But that's really, I think, to monetize their natural resources, which effectively are very cheap geothermal power. And that one geothermal mine they've kind of started to bring online at $35,000 a Bitcoin, now we're double that almost, that could provide about 6% of El Salvador's annual tax revenue. when other countries that have excess unused, primarily green energy, like Indonesia, Turkey, hydro, like Tanzania, realize that this excess green energy can be monetized using Bitcoin, I think you'll see countries that are, that can have dire need for monetization and for revenue sources, be able to generate that via Bitcoin mining in a way that most developed markets don't have as obvious a advantage in doing, given just the way the natural resources in the world happen to be distributed. And so I think we have a potential for Bitcoin, fast forward a couple of years, to actually be contributing Bitcoin mining considerably to primarily developed market economies, given their excess unused and unmonetized energy resources, which are kind of latent at the moment. And I think that has real implications for how Bitcoin is viewed around the world and how people think about it, both as potentially being green and not being this kind of boiling the oceans concept of, coal being used, and also by it benefiting, countries that desperately can use those resources, as opposed to just kind of Western countries who are, just getting more wealthy.
Yes, thank you. We'll get more deeply in a few minutes to that area about green energy for digital currencies. Yes, for sure. But let me just slightly go back to the Web3 era, which I guess we can already say that we're entering it really fast, not just slowly. So in your opinion, that definitely there is a lot about making it more possible for people to get into the space, lowering those barriers. It is important, but I guess the Web3 era already has the idea, which is ideologically rooted in the idea of the decentralized internet, about the important social transformations, right?
Yeah. And I think, what you're getting at, and I should have mentioned this too, is that, in the Web 2 world, the web was built originally. Tim Berners-Lee had a vision of basically a network that was very difficult to censor, where information could be shared very freely, and a very flat ecosystem. And what's evolved over time, to your point, is a couple companies of very large scale. And that's evolved, no fault of anybody in particular. It's just when you have a global world, then companies that can get scale can, spend more on advertising, drive more users, spend more on advertising, get more users, and can really dominate, right? And so we've seen that happen both on the search side with Google, social networks with Facebook and others, and hosting with, AWS and Azure and et cetera. And what that's meant is that, a little bit to your point, is that those both become, from a technical side, single points of failure and single points of risk from a actual infrastructure safety and resilience point, but they also become effectively arms of the governments in terms of censorship and in terms of monitoring. And it's almost not their fault. Any big industry, the large companies effectively have to deal with governments, right? They say, screw you to governments, the governments will shut them down, right? That's just sort of what happens. And so you're seeing that now with WhatsApp and Facebook and Google being forced to censor search results, take down websites. And you see it in Russia, you see it in China, you see it even in democracies like India, where, the Modi's government, is forcing, I think it was WhatsApp, to shut down accounts of opposing politicians, which is sort of inconceivable in some sense. And so Web3 helps eliminate that, those single points of censorship and single points of control. It raises other issues, right? Because that means maybe do we want a complete free-for-all? That's not all positive, obviously. So I'm not going to paint the purely rosy picture of all this, but it definitely will reduce this sort of creeping, censorship and control over media and dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bowie, and let me ask you the same question as we started with Tom about the role of blockchain technology in social transformation and regional equality in your fields of interest. I do have my favorite example here about the Philippines. There were reports about Philippines who were making additional income out of the blockchain games recently, and I do love it. I mean, that's exactly what we're all here about. It's like the actual result of what we do, right? And this is amazing. So the question goes to you, Bowie.
Sure. So gaming is the fastest growing industry in 2020 and 21, especially during the pandemic. So from pay to play or pay to win mentality to now play to earn model, blockchain has disrupted the gaming industry tremendously. So the game that you mentioned is Axie Infinity. So it's a great example. And back in June this year, CNBC even reported that people in Philippines were playing this game as the main source of income. So, and subsequently, 2 months later, the Philippines of the Department of Finance even clarified that the income from Axie Infinity is taxable and suggested that, SEC or BSP might classify the cryptocurrency as a currency or security. So, and now in September, the majority of the players, they actually are based on Philippines. So this is an amazing story, especially during the pandemic. People lost their jobs, but they still have the responsibility to bring food, to bring milk, to bring bacon to the table and serve the family, right? So this is a very quite meaningful project that touched my heart a bit. And even now, people owning the Axie Infinity account in Philippines actually have more credit cards within the country. So this is a great example. As mentioned, the gamers are very used to the digital assets in the gaming space. So if you ask about the social impact, I think this is a great example. But speaking about the technology itself, because there are multiple benefits, right? Besides transparency, immutable, people can use it for digital identity. People can use it for supply chain management. But I think one other interesting, feature is beside the transparency, is the traceability. So nowadays for these government enterprises or even NGOs, it will be a great opportunity for them to keep track of the spending, of the expenses. So you're using these public blockchain, they can list, for example, like Vitaly make the donation 1 billion of USD beginning of the year. So we are able to see and track the money because he put it on a public blockchain, and we can see the actual money coming from his wallet to the end wallet. So I think that same theory can go to these charity organization, so that the traceability is a lot clear and transparent. So people can who are really in need of the money or donation can really receive those as if now it's hard to trace back.
Indeed, and people are actually willing to help other peoples and willing to donate. But when you do not see where those money goes, you would actually think like twice or thrice about it, right? So with the blockchain, we can actually see where those money actually ended, and it's like a huge implication of this technology. I quite agree with you.
And also one other element of this, also just to tack onto it, is that if you do it via blockchain, if you do it the right way, you can also eliminate credit card fees. And credit card fees take billions of dollars out of charity donations every year. And so depending now, you may have if you need to put into dollars, or maybe a fee to take it out into dollars, so you have to be careful not to get ripped off if you have to put it into fiat again, right? Because that could eliminate those savings depending on how you do it. But if you're sophisticated and do the right type of monetization of it, you also could potentially end up with tens of billions of extra dollars going to end users as opposed to credit card companies as well.
Exactly. That's also really important. Thank you, Tom. Let me ask the next question. What are your vision for the space and the world like in 5-10 years, Bowie?
5 to 10 years is too long. I think we were talking about in our prep call, and I was like, it's too long, man. I think it makes sense to talk about 2 or 3 years from now. So if I can, I guess, foresee what will happen, I think people will continue to develop in the metaverse, because this is the direction. Even Facebook, chairman, they changed the name to Meta, right? So people will continue to, I guess, more people will get into the blockchain space, whether they will either enter the cryptocurrency market to invest, or they actually learn the programming part, because I think, as Tom mentioned, we are in need of lots of developers. So people with this type of skill set will survive and actually, earn a better living than others. So while you have, when you foresee that this is the direction, I think it makes sense to definitely invest yourself in this space. So yeah, that's what I believe.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And what about you? How do you see the world in 5-10 years?
Well, it's interesting. So I think there's something called Amara's law, which comes back from the 1960s, which says that we tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And so I think, we all expect things to happen immediately, and then we sort of don't realize how much things can change over a longer period of time. And so I just sort of put that out there. I think the problem with us is that with blockchain and crypto and gaming, things are changing very quickly. And to Bowie's point, if we had had this panel 5 years ago, none of us would have mentioned the metaverse. None of us would have mentioned NFTs, right? So that would have been a big miss, right? And so I think that is exactly to her point about how some of these things are evolving very, very quickly. Even that being said, I still think looking forward, I will go out and make some predictions long term. And one of them is that, I think protocols are a superior business than existing companies. And so if you think about Amazon, it took Amazon probably one of the most aggressively globally expansionist companies in the history of the world, right? It took them like 5 years to get outside the US. It took them like 8 years to get to anywhere in Asia, while before they even got to Mexico, right? And that's one of the most aggressively well-run businesses in the world. When you launch a protocol like an Ethereum, like a Hedera, you are instantly usable anywhere in the globe. And on top of it, anyone in the globe can buy your coin and can provide capital and use to it. So how on earth can existing traditional businesses compete with businesses that are, completely global from day one? That to me I don't think the markets fully recognize that. And so I'll further say, people think crypto and blockchain is hyped. I'd argue it's not hyped nearly enough. I think Bitcoin is going to rival gold and be about 10 trillion. That's about 500,000 of Bitcoin. And I think the rest of the cryptocurrency blockchain space should be tens of trillions of dollars, well beyond where it is right now. And so if I fast forward 10 years, I think we're looking at, 40, 50 trillion overall, not 3. And that is where I see this going. Now, how that breaks down, I mean, there's helium, there's that breaks down to all kinds of other kind of sub sectors and sub protocols, some of which will lose, some of which will win. But if I think long term, I actually think that blockchain and crypto become, everything's become tokenized. That actually becomes kind of the foundation of a lot of economic activity in a way that's severely underestimated right now.
Yes,
I have
exactly.
something to add on. I agree with Tom, and I also believe that the non-fungible token space will see massive growth. I think this is just the beginning. I think first 2 quarters of this year, I think there were calculating how many NFT wallet people actually have on Earth. I think we have about 500,000 at that time. And think about the actual global population on Earth. We are just at the beginning. So blockchain has enabled the freedom of expression of, such an art form or, the game items, and even such as traditional literature or music or sport and even movies. Any moment that signifies an important point in history can now capture for eternity by turning it into an NFT. This is the direction, and people recognize the potential in it. And more importantly, people can actually brag about owning it digitally. I think this is another, the digital ownership is the key, and this is the way we are heading forward, and it will continue to grow.
Yes, thank you. And I do personally believe that I guess all of us heard at least once in their life that when people compare blockchain to the invention of the internet itself, and I guess why this comparison is relevant here is that when the internet was actually developed, like a few people were using it, just like an understanding like what is behind that. I guess the same will happen with blockchain technology in future. Like no need for you to understand how deeply and how it works exactly, but you will be using it. Like it seems like to be inevitable, and that future is coming very fast. And I guess like we wouldn't even notice, like speaking back about those young generations, they would use it like from their birth. So I mean, like for them, it will be just how the world exists, and it's not like something new or like how they deal with it, like questioning it. But for sure, they will be involved into the space. And Tom, let me ask you the next questions. Since the blockchain space, when we're mentioning the blockchain space, we do mean a lot of different industries, a lot of different like spaces within this huge area. So the question would be, what are your favorite projects out there? And which one of them, like what is the most exciting part about them now? Like,
well, I mean, listen, that's difficult to answer without being incredibly biased. And so I clearly am biased because I think Hedera is the leading institutional distributed ledger. And I think it's just a question of time before the market recognizes that and before its transaction volume spikes up significantly. So I think Hedera as an enterprise grade, distributed ledger governed by enterprise for enterprise, I think that's not appreciated. I think that is going to be incredibly powerful going forward. I'm also spending every day trying to make sure Fluence is widely adopted, and that is we're going to announce a Series A in the next couple of weeks, and that will be a big step towards that happening. I think but to give examples beyond the two ones that I'm kind of emotionally, and professionally invested in from that side, just an example which I think makes it very real for people is a company called Helium, and I'm not associated with the project in it, but I am invested in it, which is it basically is taking unlicensed spectrum globally, create a protocol for that spectrum to become an IoT network. And it then has open sourced the specs for gateways. So consumers buy a gateway for between $300 and $500, plug it in their home, and then they're rewarded in cryptocurrency for providing a coverage for a small amount of real estate for a couple 100 meters or half a kilometer, whatever it is, of IoT coverage. Right now, there's about 350,000 people providing coverage this way. That will be several million soon. And so if you think about what Helium's doing, it will be the only global telecom provider. And they're upgrading to 5G soon too. So they'll be the only telecom company in the world that's global. And they're doing it with zero CapEx because every consumer is putting the money in to buy these things and is being rewarded by the coin. And people think the coin has value. because to actually use it, you'll have to buy the coin once the network really starts going in the future. And so I like to provide that as an example when people think it's all just people trading tokens and there's nothing really real about it. This is potentially the only global telco carrier, and it's doing it with no capex, right? And so this goes back to my point about how big this industry is. This company right now is a coin cap of around $4 billion. There's multiple domestic telcos that are worth $100 billion, right? This one's going to be global. It's going to happen. It's just a question of time. Is 100 billion the right number for it, or is it multi-hundred billions? And it's at 4 billion now, right? So I think this is an enormous potential success. It's really tangible. I think people can understand because everyone knows about telcos. Everyone knows you want to use a phone and what IoT connectivity can be like. And this will be, I think, a real global winner. And I don't know how you compete with it if you're a traditional carrier. So that's just, I like to give, that's just an example, I think, of the type of innovation that's happening in the space that crypto economics facilitate.
Thank you. Just to justify myself, like when I'm asking about your favorite projects, I do want to hear some biased questions, which is definitely, it's like asking about your favorite food or your favorite book. I mean, it's kind of the same, like you are very biased in that answer, but that's like kind of interesting, like why? So Bowie, my question would be to you, like about your favorites.
Sure. Just to echo with Tom, one of my recent angel investment called Tune FM actually is built on Hedera. So, and they tokenize the music, and they even have a Beyonce and her daddy studio join and sign up as one of the artists. So my favorite project current is called the Sandbox. I think most of the people must have heard about it. They are the subsidiary of a unicorn called the Animoca Brands, and they are a virtual game platform where players can play, build, own, and even monetize their virtual experiences. So in other words, play to earn platform, and they have gone from strength to strength, hitting various impressive milestones in establishing themselves as the leading player in the gamified virtual world space. And they even recently announced a strategic partnership with the South China Morning Post. And this is a media, right? And that could capture the essence of the historical moment in the series of Priceless NFT and bringing an authentic series of cultural experience to its opening gaming metaverse. And recently they just closed Series B round, and with raising 93 million, and they even have a SoftBank Vision Fund join this brand. And so as our we are True Global Ventures, we are the early investor in Sandbox, and we are extremely proud and very happy with the latest development. And these next month they're actually starting the alpha, and really excited and looking forward to more development and exciting things happening in the scene.
Thank you.
I'm happy Bowie's investing in companies that are building on Hedera. That's the best news I've heard all day. Keep it going.
Yes.
Okay. My next question would be, which is really personal for me. Unlike you, I'm working within the media sector, so I'm kind of a bridge between the audience and you guys who are actually building those things within the space. And what I'm really concerned about, and that is in the headline of our panel, it's about digital revolution. So my concern here about using the word revolution, which, as you might know, the word itself has a lot of negative connotations in it, because revolution means some really dramatic changes, and having dramatic changes within the definition means that there are some negative sides of this process. So my question would be, should we rather talk about evolution of the space, not just, or should we keep insisting on the revolutionizing part? Tom.
It depends who you're talking to, because you're dead right that in a revolution there are losers by definition, but changing the status quo requires hard work, which is not recognized for a long time, and a lot of sacrifice. And so in order to get people to do that, they have to believe that what they're doing matters and is going to make a difference and is worth the time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, and tears that they put into it. And so as a inspiring, if you want to inspire people to go through this effort and the work and the kludgy beginnings of it and the failures, they have to believe that there's something different and big on the other side. And revolution conveys that in a way that evolution doesn't. And so I think you're right that revolution will scare some of the, some of the existing, status quo, but that's almost a necessary trade-off to get the level of conviction in the upstarts that's required to kind of break through those walls and keep pushing in what, in the best of circumstances, is a significant, uphill battle that is, hard fought.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you, Tom. Bowie, what about you?
When you talk about the evolution, and when Tom was elaborating it, it reminds me of a story of Blockbusters and Netflix. So, back in early 2000, Netflix founders actually proposed to sell the company to Blockbuster for $50 million, but Blockbuster turned them down, and ended up they missed the goal, like the giant diamond, and went bankrupt. So, during the evolution time, there must be somebody who missed the bus and or what you call be a loser. So, but in the blockchain space, I think there are, it really depends on how you look at it, right? So for people who truly believe it, get on the ride, get on this trend and get to know, I think more importantly, get to know what's happening in the scene, what's happening in the space, and get themselves educated. You are not necessarily need to go and start investing, right? I think more importantly, you need to get yourself educated first before you do anything. You need to, once you have the knowledge, you turn into a skill set, and skill set definitely will bring you something valuable. So I think the key is to get yourself educated and spread the knowledge. When more people are educated in the space, and more people will contribute, more people will get involved, and that's how we can move things forward and improve.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me ask my last question to you about the important changes within the environmental sector. So in your opinion, Tom, can blockchain technology provide a positive environmental impact, and how, if yes?
Yep. So there's a couple ways, but one way I'll talk about is Stronghold Digital Mining, this environmentally beneficial miner based in the US. And what it does is it cleans up waste coal deposits in Pennsylvania. When coal was mined in Pennsylvania, they took the low quality coal and just dumped it, filled up, valleys, rivers, et cetera. It's been sitting there for decades polluting. It's expensive to clean up. You got to dig it up. You got to do something with it. And no one has done it. What Stronghold does is it digs it up, and then it mixes it with lime, and it burns it in a very controlled, clean way. And so it does eliminate some CO2. It does emit some CO2, to be fair, but it eliminates the sulfur and 100 other negative chemicals which are currently leaching into the groundwater. And the thing it really is, these coal piles catch fire anyway, so the CO2 would be released anyway. And so this basically releases some of the CO2 that would have happened anyway, but it controls all the other chemicals. Without Bitcoin mining, these piles would sit there, catch fire, and pollute Pennsylvania for another 100 years. And so that is a very tangible example of how Bitcoin and blockchain can help the environment. And the other, obviously, is I think it's going to lead to far more efficient geothermal technology. It's going to catalyze more solar investments in solar, and it's also going to catalyze small SMR, small modular nuclear reactors, because in countries without natural resources, the payback period for small modular reactor is now a year mining Bitcoin, as opposed to 20 years selling to the grid at normal prices. And so I think you will see a real investment in green technology that previously was uneconomic or much longer payback period. And that will be directly the result of the monetization of Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you, Bowie. And what about you? What do you think?
I think it's important to recognize, based on the today's price, Ether is 4,600 per Ether, right? And just to know, the Ethereum network has now burned approximately 2.3 billion USD, based on today's Ether price. OpenSea has consumed about 15%, which is equivalent to 347 million, or even X Infinity, but burn over 60 million just for the gas fee. So I think we should know, or we should recognize the impact of using blockchain. Actually consume a lot of gas fee, and if you speak about the environmental part, there are lots of mining company already, ship their energy to sustainable energy, or such as solar, or wind, and or water. So I think we can see the trend that in Q1 or Q2, only about 54% of the mining company or using sustainable energy, and in Q3 it went up to like about 3%. So I think we will see the trend moving forward, that will be more company using sustainable energy to do mining than before.
Yes, I quite agree. Thank you so much. So thank you, Bowie. Thank you, Tom. I guess we had an amazing panel raising really interesting, exciting, and which is really matters that those topics are really important to discuss with and to involve more people into that discussion. Thank you so much, and thank you, Global Impact Week, for hosting this, for having this panel and inviting us. So it was my real pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Hey, thanks, Max, and thanks, Bowie and Tom. Great discussion indeed. So regardless if we like it or not, another full day and 12 hours of agenda come to an end, but not Webit Global Impact Week. It's only the second day, and we have 3 more to go. We are going to experience some fantastic speakers tomorrow as part of the Planet Guardians Day. It's so fascinating, and I'm so excited from what we are going to hear tomorrow. So far, we had 2 days, the society architects and the economic sustainers, 2 days full of truly phenomenal speakers, mind-blowing talks, and obviously challenging discussions. Tomorrow, we turn our sight towards those who protect our planet and who make sure not the planet, but the humankind to continue exist while being in synergy with the beautiful Mother Nature. Stay tuned, and looking forward to meet you tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Central European Time. Until then, have a wonderful night, day, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you all.